Hello, my name is Brett Wethington, and today I would like to talk to you about one of the course concepts we learned this week, specifically from Chapter 11, which involves risks within the supply chain or supply chain risks. Supply chain risks should be at the top of the knowledge prioritization of anybody specializing in operations management, and specifically those who specialize in understanding the movement of the flow of a supply chain or directly responsible for overlooking the processes of a supply chain. It's very important to know a variety of factors that may affect one's supply chain and all the risks involved. That way, if you are knowledgeable about the possible risks, then they may be mitigated in some way if you're able to forecast the issue before it does happen. To give some examples of what this might look like to somebody overseeing a supply chain, first, we must look at factors within the area of the supply chain itself, and this includes economic and political stability, which play a big hand within the supply chain of an area, because if a supplier is in the middle of a very tense political or economic climate that is in a downturn, it may be wise of an organization to take necessary precautions with that certain supplier. That way the supply chain process doesn't get halted. This may include providing additional assistance to the supplier at the time, or it may also include completely separating oneself from that supply chain at that moment in time and allowing other supply chains to pick up the groundwork where that supply chain may fail. In addition to this, besides political and economic downturn, organizations must also be used to seeing patterns within supply chain movements. And that's like if suppliers are able to give the goods on time, if they're able to successfully fulfill orders, or if they fail in any of these facets, then they might be able to get them for a breach of contract if it was within a contract that they need to give X amount of units per X amount of time a year. And if they're in breach of that, they might need to be able to negotiate that legally, or they may want to go with a completely separate supplier altogether. And that also might be a smart move if your supplier at the time is not currently meeting the demands that you need as an organization. It's also important to look at other more spontaneous factors, and that includes, for example, natural disasters or any theft or vandalism that may disrupt the flow of the supply chain. And that's why it's always important for organizations to be properly insured as well. That way insurance policies can pick up where these damages may occur, or if machinery is damaged, then they may be able to take money from insurance and be able to, fulfill those machines again where they are needed. And then on top of that, you also have to look at distribution within a supply chain, and you have to know distribution routes of the supply chain itself. This is also really important to know, because if a supply chain must move through a very dangerous environment, or an environment that may not be the safest for a supply distributor to go through, it's also important to know potential risks involved with traveling through those areas, and your supply chain may be at risk for either being vandalized or theft may occur and things like that. So these are all things that people must look into when looking at the supply chain itself. There's a vast majority of ways to mitigate the risks associated with the supply chain, and I've listed most of those already, but it's always important to try to forecast these issues before they happen. And forecasting allows some proper insight into events that may occur in the future. And even if events don't end up occurring and it's a false forecast, it's always better to be prepared, and then rather than get stuck high and dry with a lack of product and a massive demand for a product that an organization just simply doesn't have anymore. So keeping all these factors considered, those specializing in operations management, and specifically those specializing in the overseeing of a supply chain, it's extremely important to know all the risks involved with the supply chain and all the ways of how to mitigate those risks. Thank you.